Hello, hello, hello. My name is Nate Rasa, and welcome back to I Just Can't Even With Myself Right Now, my personal pet project podcast where I discuss absolutely anything that comes to mind, because limits are for losers, and in my space, we follow the wind. So sit back, tense up, and enjoy NE Unleashed. And as always, live it up, folks, and make it happen. Okay, everybody, so welcome back, and it's been a while, so I'd like to say I missed ya. For those listening, note that your ideas are my fodder, and I will react accordingly from them, and that's my kind of transition, because today's topic today's babble is actually a suggestion from ENFP Twitter handle, ENFP Please Love Me. I have to say, I love this, I love your name, by the way. And you asked me to please do an FE episode, because I'm trying to learn, and I think you already know where this is going. I can't even right now, which, relate, sister. Like, come on. We can't even right now. And why is that? I feel like that's a good question, because I think it's a lot of folks are coming across and are thinking about the same thing, or feeling the same thing. Like, what makes FE seem so unbearable to those who don't have it as a valued function, or what is it about it that's unbearable that we need to understand, and is there any wisdoms we need to draw from? I have so many questions, which I hope I'm going to be able to cover by babbling again. So before we babble all the way, we had to have a united understanding of what FE is, because for one, I do think it's a very misunderstood function. I think that FE does have a lot of value in that sense. It's just up to us as individuals to be able to really kind of tap in to what it is and why it's useful. Because I think for FE folks, they don't usually think of it in that way. Unfortunately, you guys have a TE user such as myself who is thinking of it that way. So for the FE people listening, here's how we're going to do it. So FE, I believe, is the pursuit of a mutual understanding, a kind of, I wouldn't say not so much as a bond, but an always kind of other people fixation. This is by principle I associate with the survival theory, where they want everyone to survive, is kind of like the fundamentals. But FE by an individual, like as an individual, as a person, other than type, there is so much in practice that's kind of missed and ignored in the type community. And I remember there was that time where everyone kind of just misread and accused FE people of just constantly stunting their growth and being such a really annoying in relationships. And it draws a lot of questions, like, why is that? So because by principle they are seeking mutual understanding, FE people are not shameless in approaching folks for the talk. And I think other people gonna know where I'm getting at here when I say the talk, because it's the conversation that I think a lot of TE users consider a waste of time, because we don't need to do the talk, but we should just get on with it and move on with our lives. That is not how FE people operate. For them, the communication is the absolute pinnacle of success, and that is the key to what they argue is the key to progress and moving forward. And let's say I'm going to pull up the FE DOMs, for example, the ESFJs and the ENFJs. These people are wonderful communicators. That's 100%, that's very clear with who they are and what they do. They are not the type of people who sit around and not do anything, because they are very clear and concise with how they go about their lives. And the thing is I think people forget that FE is backed by TI, and those two actually do work in tandem very, very well, because a lot of them, and I'm actually going to quote a paragraph from the sociotype.com on extroverted ethics, because they have a kind of a tendency to, to really, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. They said they're conscious of the fact that the way something is said is very important, because it also determines how it is also received. So because they have this kind of intense connection to or fixation on the way things are said, because for them they believe that that impact, which I also like to call FE impact, is a way that can make a person feel a certain way. Now, that realm of FE is very foreign to people who are FI, because for us, our arguments are, well, you can't make me feel anything. I feel what I want to feel, which is also very, very valid, right? Like, we as FI people, we have our own determinations on how we want to do things. We don't really, we kind of treat that kind of FE ability like a kind of invasive almost. And I know there's a lot of FI people and FE like kind of interactions where that ended up becoming the case. But the invasive aspect is, I would say, a coping mechanism that, which I don't necessarily think that there's a huge misunderstanding between both types, both functions when they interact in that sense, because FI misunderstands that the invasion isn't solely towards the FI. FE's argument in that is that by going for you, they also unintentionally or intentionally open themselves up to be targeted in return. And that sometimes we as FI people would forget, because the back and forth is very true. The back and because again, they're seeking the mutuality. So by attacking you, they attack themselves in the process. And I think that like circling loopy aspect of FE we miss out on. Like, we don't understand. I know with me and interacting with FE people, like I totally understand that the compliant aspect of them comes out when you actually take advantage of this kind of interesting little niche that FE people have. And I think not a lot of people understand that they put themselves out there almost like they risk themselves for the sake of getting you the message. By putting so much emphasis on communication, there's no wall for them. And when they interact a wall with you, they're going to keep pushing because they know that that push will push them back as well if it wasn't success or if it didn't succeed. And that give and take is what makes FE so interesting. Aside from this, they also have the ability to create a mood. And I think people may take that weirdly. Like, again, with the whole invasive quality, they assume that the mood creating is a bad thing. Like, oh, well, why do I have to let someone else take care of the mood? I take care of my feelings, whatever I want to do, which is almost always what I kind of grab from. But the thing is we forget what the mood actually means. When FE creates a mood, and I think people who are FE users listening, and I don't know if you guys know this, but you guys have a unknowing presence where when you walk into a room, and I'm going to use sci-fi terms, it's like you project like a force field, not to block people, but anything within that field has sudden comfortability to speak their mind now, which is what I think other types are missing out on. You don't get that with other types. You don't get, like, SE is way too powerful. They come in and they take up the space. FE withdraws from the space. NE makes projections of ideas out of that space, and nothing actually creates kind of the room where it's enough to make a person stay. Without FE, a lot of the things may be too powerful and may actually hinder communication, which hinders being able to interact and exchange ideas. And I think that's why people don't understand that, because let's say you take me as an NE Dom, assuming that NE is the only way I can do to communicate better. But the thing is that whole argument only holds up until somebody calls it out. Like, I actually don't know what you're talking about, because you're bouncing way too often. You've just ended up creating chaos, not the atmosphere that's required in the moment. Not the same for FE people. They walk in, they know exactly what atmosphere that needs to be created and what needs to be able to be maintained for the situation to continue moving forward. It's like, I know with FE DOMs, it's like they take that responsibility almost to their hearts and they can't really help themselves because they can't turn that off. But I know with the IXFJs, like it's definitely they kind of use it more. At least from how I experienced it, they are more likely to kind of use it as an action wise. Like I don't know, like it's it's more like in real time. But I know with FE, like as most of my interactions are FE dominant, so it's almost like natural for them. So it becomes really natural for me to watch it happen. But anyways, back to my whole little thing about where they are also twice as affected as when they are interacting with you. The problem with FE folks is that, or their issues that they run into, is that they are so extremely sensitive to the mood and the emotional flow of everything around them, that it's very easy for them to react to it and to be affected by it, like a disease almost. When they get shocked by something, they react really quickly. Let's say in a room and we're having a conversation and one person is not as engaging, they're quick to hone in on that because to them they realize it's like almost as if there's a vacuum in the force field that they've created, and now all that air they're producing hones in on that and goes, oh, you're not talking. Well, let's let you have a turn to talk. Let you do this. Let's everyone be sharing what they need to say, which is really cool. I think we as other people don't realize just how stressful that may be, because at least, and as an ENFP, socionically speaking, I actually have 40 FE, where supposedly I'm good at it, and I'd say I actually don't have a problem utilizing FE. The thing is I usually utilize it to make everybody uncomfortable, not the other way around. I kind of go against the emotional appropriateness, basically. But at the same time, when requested to do so, I know what to do with FE. But I take it as kind of taxing on my energy. So when I see FE DOMs and FE Oxys kind of deal with the FE of life, and I'm going, how do you guys live? Because it seems like an exhausting way to go about their lives. And they tell me that they had just lived with it all their life. Like, this is how they do it. And I mean, they say the same thing with us as FI people. Like, how do we move and make anything happen if we're constantly blocked by the capacity of whether or not our FI wants something to be done or not? You know, like we're blocked by, or in sociotype definitions, like how we are dealing with distances. Like, if I don't like you, we're just not going to talk, and then nothing happens. Whereas FE, they're not really into that. Like, they don't really deal with grudges in that sense. And let's say it's not even a grudge. It's just for us, we just don't like them. And we just put up a wall. For them, they don't have to like you, but they can still interact with you. They really don't see the big deal as to why they can't talk to you. You're still human. It takes a lot, actually, for them to deny you communication. Because for them, since communication is the topmost apex kind of point in their lives, to deny somebody that must take a lot of work. That other person must be, like, really mean. You know, that person must have really done a lot of bad things for this person. I know with me, like, with interacting with FE folks, I'm always telling them, like, yes, it's okay to have walls. It's okay to not interact with them. And then they're going, but why not? And I'm going, because it can cause bad results for you. You know, sometimes the argument of communication may not always work. And I know it's crazy. I know with FE people are like, what? Communication doesn't always work? And I'm like, yeah, sometimes it really doesn't. Sometimes you're just wasting your time. I'm not saying with me that's a problem, because I personally don't have a problem with the talk. You know, like, go ahead, you know, draw it out of me. Like, it's totally fine. I'm not going to have a problem with that, because that's actually kind of cool. But, like, for other people, especially those who may treat it as an offense or as a problem, I don't think you need to put in much time and effort into these folks and invest in them, because there's no need. Now, it's going to be tough for that, because for FE people, they don't look at the world in those lens, like in the lens of investments and all that stuff. At least I don't think so. Again, FE people, if you're listening, call me out. And at the same time, like, the difference as well of the SI versus NI can even create kind of can create even kind of an interesting take on FE. I think people majority wise understand FE as the group harmony thing, the creating that atmosphere where everyone's open to speak their mind. But that's FE in the SI sense, where they don't like anything new. Or they struggle with chasing the new, and so they like to prioritize comfortability. So, you know, things like that will be more positive, be more uplifting, upbeat. which is contrary to FE and I, because they're looking at the extroverted feeling, but they're looking at the group harmony, but they're looking at the problem as if to try to take away from it. They want to get rid of it. So they're more kind of active, less to do with comfort. They're more to deal with how do we solve your problems, because solving your problem can then make the mood good. They don't really think in sustaining the good. They think of removing the bad, and this can show in how these two types kind of present themselves in people, in individuals. And why is that? Because FESI or ESFJs or ISFJs, you see them as less likely to take on hard leader jobs. They're less likely to chase after the spotlight, even though they're most likely they definitely can. But there's just a tendency for them to kind of wonder and ask who's in charge most of the time. They always have to understand, like, in the position of authority, who is what and where is who in their place. Are you in your lane? What's your deal? Usually, if you ask, like, the NFJs, they're often told that they, that they just kind of have job, like, these responsibilities kind of just given to them. It's very subtle. Like, it's not usually very, very obvious, because both are actually incredibly good at it. I'm not it's funny because I'm not trying to backpedal with this, because it's really hard to catch the subtle differences between the two, especially in this particular avenue. But there is those little moments where like an SFJ is probably gonna go, oh well, I'm just like a little shy, like I'm just not really super into it. And then, like, you have an NFJ going like, oh well, I mean, this is how this is and this is how that, and I'm just gonna do this, and it just suddenly becomes this whole big thing. And big, in a sense, I'm just using how NI as being an intuitive function, and anything in the ego block gives it that kind of edge when it comes to keeping yourself in the bigger picture kind of moment. Whereas SFJs are probably more comfortable with the details, which actually transitions wonderfully to my next little thing about them. The difference in detailing is actually really, really clear. NFJs are very connected to time, in a sense. This is a thing I've been brewing. I feel like the NFJs, or NI in general, they draw their wisdom from time, whereas the SI and the SI people, they draw their experiences through time, if that makes sense. And the reason why I say that is because I know SI always likes to talk about, experience is the best teacher, or they aren't super comfortable a lot of things because they can't seem to connect the dots in that sense. But when they do connect the dots, it's almost very assured and it's very unshakable. It's kind of that edge that SI has over the other ones. By continuously preparing and making sure everything is all taken care of, they don't have to worry about how things could or could not go down. Their mind doesn't look in that direction. Whereas NI doesn't do that. NI has to pull from another period in time where something has happened, and they assume that that's probably part of it as well. And I say assume probably because I'm an NE user, but really they pull it knowing that that's probably the most likely thing that's going to happen. I know with NFJs I've spoken to, they've definitely have this moment where sometimes you just know what to do and you just act accordingly, especially those with a higher SE in their stacking. They just kind of act and they just know how to make it happen. I know with SFJs there's definitely a hesitation involved, and that can definitely be because of NE being tertiary, like that there is that hesitation. There's a little bit of a pause to consider the possibilities, but not completely. But of course I'm distracting everybody because the concept is FE. And FE, I just want to just add on, is that it's such a very useful thing. And the reason why I say this again, because of what I mentioned earlier in the podcast, or in this episode, people need both extroverted judging functions to be able to actually kind of move around in life. I know with the TE you need the FI to humanize you, and with FE you need TI to be able to communicate using the correct wordings and being able to have the correct logical consistency in your arguments to properly be able to convey your thoughts. It's just that with FE you need to be able to express yourself in a way that other people can be able to take in and handle you. They're very great, tactful in such a, they make being tact an art form, if that makes sense. there's always this thing where they can just convert what you're saying into something that's more palatable, and it's suddenly even fantastic. It's different. It's very different style from TE. TE is very, I would say, straightforward, and it's like, this is to the point, and this is what it is. Often lacking tact, because that's why a lot of times people perceive TE as a little too cold, which I will kind of, move on to that in a different episode. But with FE, it's the opposite. There's a warmth in there. There's a warmth in there that isn't present. And the reason why it's like that is because both FE users, given if they're FE negative or FE plus, which is, again, socionically speaking, but again, if you're going to compare SFJ versus NFJ, it's a better way to put it, there is a flavor of FE that is still very prevalent that makes it more palatable for people to hear. Now, the things that gets them to be, let's say, annoying, to get them a little bit irritating, is because they have this tendency to want to know, if they want to know something and they want to understand something completely. With inferior TI, or even tertiary TI, there is a need for knowing the entire thing first. They have a need to study one subject first and be able to fully understand it from all different places and all different angles. Without being able to fully understand something, it gets them that kind of paralysis. They don't want to just, say whatever. So this can come out because with inferior TI, they're going to seek this out from other people. So they're going to ask you questions. They're going to try to ask you and wonder why this, why that, why didn't you do this way, why didn't you that way, couldn't we have done this way? The key to understanding FE users is that they're not actually coming at you personally. I think that's the biggest thing that I think everybody needs to understand. It's never a personal attack, because like I mentioned before, FE is simultaneous vulnerability. By reading you, and I say this with weird air quotes that I could try to create, you are also open to read them as well, and they are also just as vulnerable to take in your criticism, because that's what they want, is the mutuality of this whole shindig. Now, to have that, to misread that, to misinterpret that as somehow attacking you, and I think it's very FI of us, FI users, to just assume that our emotions are just to our own and it's nobody else's business but our own, which is the opposite viewpoint of FE users. So to understand that they're not actually coming at you like full on is actually a very big step already in understanding and being able to get where they're coming from, because they are honest, seriously just not trying to do that. And I know that there's health factors and circumstances that may affect and change, but most of the time, from what I've noticed and from my own interactions with FE people, that it's always just an opportunity to have a discussion. That's all they want. It sounds like it's or it doesn't sound petty. It sounds like a waste of time for us, because we're like, oh, why do we have to talk again? Like, we just talked about this. But the thing is they have their doubts and they want to, calm those doubts. And the only way to calm those doubts is if you can be able to confirm it to them by hearing you say the things. And the thing is, with FE people, it's still an extroverted judging function. They're not here for the nonsense. They want to hear a sensible answer, and they want to hear something that's objective and that's clear and concise. Which I think we tend to forget, because a lot of the times they use flowery language and because of the tact thing that I mentioned, but they actually are looking for concise and clarity. And clarity to them isn't them producing clarity, it's clarity between the two of you guys. That's kind of like the big thing about them. You need to be both on the same page. And that being both on the same page is what promotes harmony and is what promotes like the unity and moving forward together, which I think a lot of people tend to forget. And I'm saying people broadly because I want people to be able to, and I want all the listeners to be able to like understand that nothing here is meant to attack anyone personally. It's meant to provoke a internal monologue going on, or a conversation, a topic that gets you to understand that there is so much more to every type, that there's so much more to know from just the simple definitions you read on the internet. Because a lot of misinterpretations, a lot of people who don't really understand it, and they start going out and on and off without having first checked with like the people who do have these functions and engaged with them. Because like at the basis of every kind of relationship is communication, which is, you know, for lack of a better term, the FE of it all, the realm of FE. And I feel like we need to have the benefit of the doubt always in the back of our minds that the answers or the problems aren't always rooted in FE. You know, like there has to be something in that. Of course, I'm not saying that to defend it or to like weirdly weird this kind of thing, because I know the FE people listening can and will definitely, most definitely can defend themselves, and most definitely can like call me out, and I can call them out back as well. Like that is not a problem whatsoever. Because again, if you want that talk, we will have that talk, and that's not a big deal in my opinion. It's just that this little thing I've noticed, and the reason why I'm bringing it so much focus on this particular episode, because, and I think it's the major struggle for me producing this episode, actually trying to get my thoughts out, because I don't usually know how much everyone's kind of understand. I can't really gauge that in a mass, you know, times 1,000 type of thing. Like I don't know how the mass understands or the majority gets it. But yes, like the benefit of the doubt for FE people is very important. You know, they understand that they don't mean any harm. You know, like if that doesn't make sense, like FI isn't the only innocent function out there either. So no function is innocent, if that makes sense. So I just want to kind of I want people to like, and maybe this is like the start of my little basics with the functions. I have a feeling that because I'm keeping this very short, like, you know, 20 to 30 minute episodes each, that I will definitely get back into these topics again and get even more in depth with them, which I feel like, you know, I can probably change my tone and slow down a little bit more for those episodes. I just want right now, being as I'm starting up with this whole little medium, you know, this being content creating on a podcast medium, that get my foot in there kind of thing, and for you guys to just let me know what you guys take. I really do appreciate the feedback, and for all of you FE people, I just would like to say that you guys are incredibly precious in the types community. I feel like we need more. You know, I feel like we need more of you guys expressing your thoughts. I feel like we need you guys to come in here and like argue. I feel like you guys need to share your experiences more, and not just those with FE in the tertiary and the inferior slots, which I'm talking about you NTPs and STPs, because y'all are cool too, but we don't have the SFJs and the NFJs, and we need to talk a little bit more about them, and how their viewpoint is incredibly important, because again, we miss out on so much of the human experience by not fully, you know, kind of unearthing the little bits and pieces of other people around us. And there's wisdom in that. And, you know, till next time, I hope you guys really enjoy listening to this podcast. And I hope you guys have a good morning and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.